Short films have a running time of 40 minutes or less. Film festivals usually display short films so that upcoming filmmakers earn some recognition, allowing their work to be recognised and reviewed by film lovers and critics. An example of this, there are feature-length films, productions, entertainment, drama and political filmmaking. Feature-length films are usually 50 minutes or longer due to the fact they have a bigger budget and a bigger crew. Furthermore, these productions are made to entertain the audience as well as including some of their own views and morals in the story. An example of this is Avengers Infinity War. The next thing is a TV drama or issue-based narrative filmmaking. TV dramas usually are an hour long due to the fact they have more information for the viewer than a serial drama. However, TV dramas usually have more meaning and are usually based on an issue. An example of this is Breaking Bad, when Walter White and his accomplice starts making meth. The opposite of a TV drama is a serial drama or an ongoing narrative development or recurring themes. Serial dramas such as Hollyoaks, EastEnders or A Casualty are constantly recurring and have an ongoing narrative development. Unlike the TV drama, serial dramas are not limited seasons and are usually renewed and with an ongoing storyline. The next thing I'll be talking about is narrative structures. First of all, there are cause and effect or the motivation of the protagonist or the order of storytelling. This is for the main character has a goal to achieve and achieve something at the end of the film, for example money, his lover, etc. An example of this is Italian Job, when they're hanging off a cliff for the gold. The next thing is a narrative model on theory. This links with Todorow's theory, where at the start everything will be peaceful and fine and everyone will be getting along well, and throughout the film more and more bad things will start happening. An example of this is the Simpsons movie. This is because at the start of the film they're all happy, but when the film goes on, more and more bad things happen. Next we have characterization, stereotypes and stock characters. This means certain characters fit into certain roles and features. For example, women scream and run, whereas men usually fight the bad guy in most films. For example, in Scream there are usually majority of the girls scream and the men usually kill them. Furthermore, the stereotypes such as Team America portray other religions and ethnicities as they want. An open or closed ending is where we know what happens at the end of the film to where we don't know what will happen to the character at the end. Strand and multi-strand ending is when we follow the storyline of multiple characters compared to single strand is when we follow only one person. An example of this is Seven Psychopaths. Realist and anti-realist films are which we can be associated with reality or not. Anti-realistic is when it is not realistic at all and it can also be fake. An example of this is Avengers Infinity War. Next we have visual storytelling. This is like mise-en-scène. Mise-en-scène is the arrangement of things which allow you to know and understand about the scene or the person. For example, if we are watching a film and a cowboy enters the scene, we will know that he is from the Wild Wild West. An example of this is the good and the bad and the ugly. Next we have the camera. The camera angle and framing has a huge impact on the film as we can gather amounts of information during the film. For example, if there is a low tilt we know that the character is powerful and strong, but if it is a high tilt we know that the character is vulnerable and weak. An example of this is the Avengers when the villain's accomplices start invading the Earth. Next we have lighting. Lighting is also important for films as it sets up the scene and allows the audience to know what might happen or what is going to happen. For example, in a horror film, it might be dark and gloomy because the evil spirit is nearby or a person is about to die. An example of this is The Conjuring 2, where the demon is finally revealed. Next we have sound. There are two different sounds we have, diegetic and non-diegetic sound. The difference between these is that diegetic and non-diegetic sound is that diegetic is the sound being emitted and can be heard by the viewer and the character. An example of these are footsteps or breathing. Non-diegetic sound is the sound is being played for drama purposes and can only be heard by the viewer. These are things like theme tunes. An example of diegetic and non-diegetic sounds are Reservoir Dogs and 28 Weeks Later. The use of music films or shows means that we can hear which makes the film better or more intense. Examples of these are things like film tune or in-screen music. Furthermore, the use of music could be the characters start singing or listening to music during the film. An example of this is Halloween or Wayne's World. Finally, we have film genres. Genre and audience. A genre is the themes and conventions of a film in which the audience can clearly identify which genre it is. For example, we can clearly tell a horror film is a horror film because it makes us jump and scared, and with science fiction films, it is spaceships and superheroes. Two films that I gathered are Insidious and Black Panther. The next thing is generic characterizations. Generic characterizations is the characters in the films are portrayed as. For example, in a horror film, the guy is usually the person who tends to kill the villain, and the pretty kill tends to die first. In a sci-fi film, the good guys tend to always come out on top. For example, Scream and Superman. The next thing is audience expectations. Audience expectations mean what the audience or the viewer want from the film or the movie. For example, in a horror film they want a lot of deaths and gore, and with sci-fi they want something out of space or with spaceships. A very good example that I found was Interstellar, when the guy is falling through the black hole in space. The next thing I thought about talking about is generic subversions. Generic subversion means what happens at the end of the film is usually swished around. For example, in the superhero film, they usually expect the superheroes to beat the villain. The subversion for this is the villain beats the superheroes. One of the films that I found was blockbuster hit Avengers Infinity War, where Thanos, the villain, ends up clicking the Infinity Gauntlet and killing the majority of our superheroes. This is my Quiet Place analysis talking about the stylistic codes. A Quiet Place's characters are your typical horror movie characters, however, the acting takes you away from the fact that there are many cliche moments. Furthermore, you have the dad which sacrifices himself. You would think that the dad sacrifices himself at the end of the film, however, it isn't the dad which saved the day, it is the mother and the daughter. The film isn't like your ordinary film as it is all silent with very few words. The only bit of sound we get is through the ambient noises and screaming of people who want to kill themselves. We as the viewer get a great example of how the film is set out through the start. We start the film off in a shop displaying different characters. We get a great example of the sound when the dad starts speaking sign language to the son. This scene at the start sets the film for the viewer as we now know that the film will be in silence. This silence shows us that the family are alone and they only have each other. In addition to this, we know that the world is in chaos because when the family leave the shop, the camera rises and we can see the abandoned shops and cars on the road. The camera work adding to the silence gives us a good understanding of what the world is like. Furthermore, the way the youngster is always the last one to be seen on camera and also the one that is always at the back shows that something may happen to him. The stylistic codes of A Quiet Place are not conventional, as there aren't many films that have been filmed the same way as A Quiet Place. For example, the editing of the film has to be quick and consistent, showing us the faces of the characters, allowing us to see the emotion on their faces so that we know how the character is feeling due to the film being in silence. Another way A Quiet Place stylistic codes doesn't seem conventional is through the sound. Throughout the film we are stuck in silence, leaving the viewer on the edge of their seats waiting to see what is going to happen. However, when we get sound, it's either through non-diegetic sound, like the crunching on leaves, or through diegetic sound, like when the monster is roaring. However, the way the film ends is quite cliché, and is seen in many different horror films, with a character finding out how to kill the monster then leaving it on a cliffhanger for a sequel to be produced. The primary audience for A Quiet Place are people aged 13 or over due to the fact that the film has been rated PG-13. The film is also for all genders. The response to this film would be surprised and shocked as there are multiple scenes in which the viewer would be shocked from what is happening in the film. Furthermore, there are also many scenes where the viewer would be surprised about what has happened, especially at the start of the film and nearing to the end of the film. This is my second horror film analysis, which is Psycho. The stylistic codes of Psycho are all sneaky and clever in the way that they are used. For example, at the beginning we see a woman driving her car. Due to the colour being black and white, we cannot tell anything through lighting. Unlike A Quiet Place, which is in colour and we can tell something is going to happen if the lighting is dark or bright. So the way that the Psycho tells us the woman is going to a bad place is through sound and editing. This is shown when we have a close-up of the woman looking scared and frightened with lightning going on in the background. This is like pathetic fallacy, showing the audience that wherever the woman is going, she will be in danger. Furthermore, the editing gives us a great look on what the character emotions are. For example, in the "We All Go a Little Mad Sometimes" scene, we see that the Norman is starting to act strange. In addition to this, we can see that Norman's eyes tend to constantly look away from Marion, as if he was trying to hide something. The stylistic codes at the beginning are mainly sound and editing. This is because the film is shot in black and white, and therefore we can't see any lighting. Therefore, the sound gives us a very good idea of what is happening. At the start, we can see that there is lightning and thunder gives us a good idea of what is about to happen, and ultimately, wherever Marion goes, it will be dangerous. At the end of the film is a voiceover of someone speaking about Norma to somebody. The stylistic codes that are used in this scene are performance, editing, and sound. These three stylistic codes create an intense atmosphere, as we know that Norman Bates is a psycho and kills people, and the irony of the person says that he won't kill a fly tells us that he's indeed crazy. Also, the way he looks at the camera signifies that he knows what he's done is wrong and he doesn't care anymore. Furthermore, the sound is eerie and scary. The stylistic codes of Psycho are not conventional, as the film is an original and others' films have not been based on it. The way the film is planned out is unique, as it starts off slowly, giving the audience a little hope that Norman Bates is an ordinary guy. However, as the film goes on, we start seeing little things that grab our attention and makes us start thinking that Norman is actually the antagonist and the killer. The primary audience for Psycho are people aged 17 plus, due to the fact that this film is scary and has gore in it. This film is for all genders, but mainly men watch films like this. The response to this film would be scared due to the fact there are scenes in which people are killed, and furthermore there are scenes which leave the viewer confused and shocked, especially at the start and end of the film. This is the comparison between A Quiet Place and Psycho. When comparing both A Quiet Place and Psycho, I found out that they are not that similar and do not have that many similar stylistic codes. One of the obvious stylistic codes in the film is the use of colour. With Psycho, you cannot really tell something bad is going to happen, as everything is in black and white. On the other hand, A Quiet Place has a lot of colour integrated in the film, and whilst watching the film, the lighting has a massive effect on the audience, as when the film gets dark in A Quiet Place, we have a slight suspicion that something may happen. A similarity that I gathered whilst watching both films was the use of the camera shot. Both films have many close-up shots showing us the emotion of the character. In my opinion, I think this is effective in both films as it creates a tense and suspenseful moment. One clip that I can pick out of both films is in A Quiet Place leading up to the son's death. We see many quick cuts creating an edge-of-the-seat experience, and at the ending of Psycho, we get a zooming close-up whilst the voiceover is happening, creating an eerie and mysterious scene. Another difference is the use of sound. In my opinion, I thought that A Quiet Place is more intense and suspenseful as it is in complete silence with no talking. Furthermore, the majority of the time it is non-diegetic sound, creating an anxious moment whilst watching. This does not really happen in Psycho, so that is not that suspenseful. The narrative of both films are completely different. Psycho starts with Miss Bates in her car driving away from something, whilst the voiceover of her arguing with someone is in the background. This is different to A Quiet Place because this is different to A Quiet Place because at the start of the film, they are theming a store, and the focus is not on the characters, but is on the toy, which her dad puts away. This was done on purpose so that we know the backstory is, and what the consequences of making noises in the world are. The ending of both films are different because at the start of Psycho, we start with a woman. However, she dies early on in the film, and we end the film with Norman Bates. The ending of Psycho is both mysterious and tense due to it ending with the character breaking the fourth wall and staring at the camera as if he was looking at us, the audience. In addition to the break in the fourth wall, the voiceover of Norman Bates' alternative persona creates both a tense and exciting ending. However, at the end of A Quiet Place, we end the film with the main characters killing one of the monsters and finding out the weakness of it. The film pans to a screen where we see a dozen more monsters running towards their house, but before the ending, we see the mother reload the shotgun, foreshadowing that they will kill all the monsters running towards them. There are some stock characters in A Quiet Place. For example, when the dad and daughter are walking in the woods, they find a crazy old man who doesn't want to live, so he screams and dies. However, when watching Psycho, I couldn't find any stock characters in the film. The protagonists in both films are similar due to the fact that they both end up knowing how to stop the antagonist. The antagonists in the films are different, as Norman Bates is a psychopathic killer who kills for fun, and the monsters in A Quiet Place only kill if you make any sound. The only similarity between the antagonists is that they both kill. In A Quiet Place, the development of the characters are different because in A Quiet Place we see that the characters are slowly getting killed off, and at the end we are left with 3 of our starting family as they find out how to kill the monsters. This is similar to Psycho due to the fact that throughout the duration of the film, we start seeing the real Norman Bates. This is because at the start he acts normal, but as the film goes on we start to see something weird about him, and we start finding little inconsistencies in his narrative. In the 1966 version of Batman, it had many stylistic codes such as mise-en-scène, performance, and sound. The lighting in the film is mainly high-key lighting. When watching the film, I noticed that there wasn't a single bit of darkness, even in the fight scenes. This links well with the stylistic codes of sound, because in the film there is cartoony sound, and furthermore, when the character punches someone, a speech bubble with a bang or crash will pop up. The 1966 Batman is also extremely cliched, as we probably could tell what would happen at the end of the film. Also, superhero films back in the past were not subverted, and we could probably tell what would happen to our superhero. However, superhero films in the past weren't really dark, and the majority of the time it was high-key lighting. At the start of the film, we see two normal men, however it turns out that they are Batman and Robin. Furthermore, we see a helicopter which we guess is the Batcopter. In addition to the Batcopter, we also have a POV shot of Batman riding the Batmobile. We can also hear the noises of the Batmobile, which shows the power of Batman. Also, at the start we see a shark biting Batman, and we see Robin helping Batman. This shows that Robin is Batman's accomplice, and will help Batman with anything he needs help with. At the end of Batman, we see the protagonist defeat the antagonist and ultimately saving the presence of the world from dying so the bad guys could take over. The 1966 Batman film is extremely conventional due to the fact that it fit all of the superhero conventions, from the protagonist defeating the antagonist at the end. In addition to this, we see the main superhero have a sidekick. There is a love interest. Another stylistic code of Batman is the sound of the film. Throughout the film, there are many cliched things that happen, such as whenever there is plosive sound, a speech bubble would pop up and show us that the sound has been made. Furthermore, the performance of the characters is also conventional because the superheroes are brave and fearless. This is shown at the start of the film when we get a long shot of Batman getting bit by a shark and also fighting the antagonist. The primary target audience of the film is PG because there are some scenes which may cause children distress. This film could be for the C2DE because you can watch the film at any cinema. The response to this film will probably be a mixture of excitement and laughter due to the fact that the films back then weren't really meant to be that scary, especially a superhero film. The blockbuster film of Avengers Infinity War has many stylistic codes in which we can see. These stylistic codes range from performance, editing, sound and mise-en-scène. The performance in this film attracts the audience immediately, connecting us to the main characters almost directly from the start of the film. Another stylistic code which is used is editing. The editing in this film is amazing, as in every shot that we see there are multiple different shots which show us the viewer the reaction and emotion of the characters. Furthermore, the sound is key to the film like this, as it is set in space and in different parts of the technological world. For example, in the majority of the scene which we are shown, we hear different diegetic and non-diegetic sounds, especially when the spaceship lands in Wakanda. Finally, mise-en-scène is what really makes the film, as the film revolves around lighting and the narrative of the character. The lighting in the film gives us a good look on whether something bad is going to happen or whether something exciting is about to happen. In addition to this, the narrative of the film follows very well and are constantly free-flowing and smooth with every transition it has. At the start of the film, we start off with a villain sidekick speaking to our captured protagonist. We then see the main antagonist, which sets the film to be tense and exciting. In this scene, we also get a close-up of one of our superheroes in pain. Throughout the beginning scene, we get multiple scenes in which the viewer is frightened and upset. For example, we see one of the main characters die in the first 10 minutes of the film. The lighting in the scene sets it up well because the scene is very dark and gloomy, foreshadowing something bad is going to happen. The ending of the film communicates the motivation of the villain, which is to swipe out half of humanity. At the end of the film, we see the villain sitting down and smiling as he has completed his mission and is proud with what he has done. Avengers Infinity War is not that conventional, as it doesn't agree with any of the other superhero films. For example, in other superhero films that I have watched, the superhero always comes out on top. This is shown in a variety of different superhero films such as Thor: The Dark World and Man of Steel. However, in this film, every time the main protagonist fights the villain, they always lose. Furthermore, the film doesn't really match other superhero endings, as the majority of the film ends with the superhero defeating the bad guy and saving the world. This links with generic subversions of the film, as we see the good guys lose to the antagonist and they are also unable to save humanity, as they are starting to get killed off. On the other hand, this doesn't really mean the superheroes have lost, due to the fact that they are making another Avengers and they are most likely going to defeat the bad guy. The primary target audience of the film is PG-13, due to the film having multiple death scenes and being quite dark. This film is really for all classes and for any gender, especially superhero and sci-fi lovers. The response to the film would be tense and nervous due to the fact that the film has many fight scenes throughout the film. When comparing both the 1966 Batman and Avengers Infinity War, I found that they are both not that similar at all. The 1966 Batman movie is very comic-like and not that dramatic. Unlike Batman, Avengers Infinity War is very dark and gloomy and can be sometimes very tense and suspenseful. The stylistic codes of both films are extremely different, as one uses a lot of dark and gloomy lighting and the Batman is very light and bright. They use very different sounds such as diegetic and non-diegetic sounds. Avengers Infinity War uses both of these sounds due to the fact that they want it to be heard to create a tense and suspenseful atmospheric background. However, in the Batman, the majority of the sound it used is for emphasis of such sounds such as bang or crash. There isn't that much of a similarity between the films. However, all movie comes to the good guys versus bad guys, which is the only similarity that is shown through both of these films. The ending of both films are completely different, as in Batman they save the day and everyone is saved, but Avengers the good guys lose and the villain wins and has what he wants at the end of the film. When watching both films, the drama in the film are both completely different, as throughout the duration of Batman it seems very comic-like, and I actually laughed in a couple of scenes. However, in Avengers, I was constantly on the edge of my seat due to the tension and suspense of the film. The narrative of both analysed films are completely different, with some similarities. However, the differences overpower these similarities. Some of the common narrative events that occur in both films, in which the main protagonist ends up finding the antagonist as they meet at the place where the film is set. However, both films start and end differently. At the start of Batman, we see the two protagonists driving a car and then suiting up to go save someone from danger. But in Avengers Infinity War, we start off the film with one of the main protagonists getting tortured by the villain's sidekicks, and then within the first 10 minutes of the film, we get a death of one of our main characters. In addition to both films being different is the ending of Batman and Avengers Infinity War. At the end of Batman, we get the common superhero save the day ending. Alternatively, in Avengers Infinity War, we end the film with half of humanity being wiped out and the majority of the superheroes being killed. And at the end, we see the antagonist sitting and smiling as he accomplishes his objective. In Avengers Infinity War, there aren't that many stock characters that are shown due to the fact that the majority of the characters shown in the film are in danger and need the help of everyone all the time. However, when watching Batman, I realised that the majority of the people that needed help were females who, when were in danger, constantly screamed and cried for help. The main protagonists in both films are not similar, as Batman and Robin both work together, but Batman is the main person who saves the day at the end of the film. On the other hand, in Avengers there are many multiple characters in the film who team up and at the end they don't win and actually lose to the antagonist. This links in well with the difference between two antagonists, as in Batman the antagonist loses to the protagonist, and in Avengers the antagonist destroys half of humanity and kills off the majority of our superheroes. There is only development in Avengers Infinity War because in Batman we find out who the antagonist is early on, and we know that Batman is going to win. But in Avengers Infinity War, we see that development through all the characters, including the antagonist. We see an antagonist can accomplish his mission, and we see one of our main protagonists become the strongest superhero. When comparing both genres, I found out that they aren't very similar. However, they do have some similarities, but the differences overpower the similarities. For example, they have different stock characters in the two genres. In the horror genre, the stock characters usually scream and are mainly females. The male stock characters in the horror genre are usually the muscular and are handsome. In addition to this, they are typically the ones that get killed by the bad guy. On the other hand, in many serial killer horror films, there is the final girl. An example of this is all the Halloweens, because at the end the killer is always after the girl, and she always comes out as the victor. Alternatively, stock characters in sci-fi films are usually aliens or intergalactic people. Stock characters can be based on stereotypes like a girl screaming, or generic characterizations like the superhero saving the day. One similarity between the horror and sci-fi genre is that the majority of the films have a equilibrium.
Don't do this!
Examples of these are Cyclones and Black Panther. When comparing the stylistic codes of the two different genres, are not the same and are always different. Let's take the sound for one of the stylistic codes. The sound in the horror genre is usually suspenseful, creating a tense atmosphere. An example of this is Halloween. Throughout Halloween, we constantly have the sound whenever the killer is around. This allows us to know when something is about to happen and the killer is close. Unlike horror films, sci-fi films have more of a mysterious tone to it. This allows the audience to admire the scene. An example of sound is in the sci-fi genre is in Interstellar, when they are stuck on a planet of water and they suddenly see a surge of water. Another stylistic code that is used in horror and
Brand Doyle, back to the Ranger now.
In both genres, we see they are all used light in very similar way. In the horror genre, we can see that the majority of the films have something bad.
The second wave is coming. We're in the middle of the swell.
A good example of lighting in
Get your ass back to the Ranger now.
Civil War. In this film, we get a good example of how lighting is used at the end. Use that right at the end of the film, where Captain America and Bucky Barnes are fighting guns. Over antagonist. Furthermore, someone's going to get hurt. show their future events, but they also indicate which genre the film is. Because in horror films, we usually get dark scenes which are accompanied with some jump scares, and on the other hand, with sci-fi films, we usually get space scenes accompanied with spaceships. When comparing both genres, I found out that they would have similar audience interpretations, because both films have very similar emotive moments throughout the films. For example, in horror films, the usual impression that they want from the audience is to feel scared and on the edge of their seats. Occasionally, they would want to put a jump scare in a scene. However, they wouldn't put that many jump scares in the film, because the audience would be able to tell when there is going to be a jump scare. Alternatively, in sci-fi films, the filmmakers would want the audience to interpret the film differently, but also similarly. This is because horror films are known for its tense and suspenseful moments. Taking inspiration from this is good if you want to make the film good. For example, towards the end of every horror film, we start to get on the edge of our seats due to it being a tense. An example of this is Halloween.